The rain poured mercilessly against the cafe windows that evening, blurring the neon lights outside into soft streaks of golden red. Emma sat alone at a corner table, staring into the swirl of her untouched cappuccino. Her hands fidgeted with the edge of the napkin, her mind repeating one stubborn thought over and over. Why did I even agree to this? It was supposed to be a simple blind date. Her best friend had arranged it, swearing that the man was kind, grounded, and perfect for someone tired of heartbreak. But as the minutes ticked by and her reflection stared back at her from the window, all she saw was a woman too tired to believe in promises anymore. Her ex had left her after 5 years together, shattering her ability to trust anyone who said, "I'll never hurt you." Now she was sitting here again, waiting for another stranger, wondering if she was just making another mistake. If you believe in kindness, love after heartbreak, and the power of second chances, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional, true-to-life stories that touch the heart. Just as Emma reached for her phone, ready to text her friend and make an excuse to leave, the door opened. A tall man stepped in, shaking the rain from his jacket. He looked around uncertainly until his eyes landed on her. He smiled, a small, hesitant smile that didn't feel rehearsed. Something about that made her pause. He wasn't strikingly handsome, not the type that turned heads, but his eyes carried a warmth that seemed familiar. "Hi, Emma," he said softly when he reached her table. "I'm Daniel." She nodded, forcing a polite smile. "Hi." From the very beginning, the date felt off. Daniel wasn't confident or charming like the men she used to date. He stumbled over his words when the waitress asked for his order and laughed awkwardly at his own mistakes. He talked about his work as a high school art teacher, about his small apartment, and his daughter Lily, who was 7. Emma smiled politely, but inside she felt deflated. He was ordinary. Too ordinary. Her ex had been an ambitious marketing executive with big plans and expensive taste. Daniel, by contrast, seemed like a man who didn't dream beyond the next paycheck. She found herself drifting off during his stories, nodding at the right times but barely listening. She had promised herself she'd give the date a chance, but after 45 minutes of polite conversation, she knew. This isn't it. When the check came, Daniel insisted on paying, even though she offered to split it. His hand trembled slightly as he set down his credit card, and she noticed the tiny paint stains around his fingernails. He looked up at her then, with a hopeful, uncertain expression that made her heart pinch just a little. "Would you maybe like to take a walk after this? There's a bookstore next door. My daughter loves it there," he asked quietly. Emma hesitated. She didn't want to hurt him, but she also didn't want to pretend. So she smiled gently and said, "You're kind, Daniel, but I think we're just different people." He nodded, quickly masking the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "Yeah, I get it. Thank you for being honest." As Emma walked out into the rain, she told herself she had done the right thing. He seemed sweet, yes, but she wanted more. Something exciting, something that made her feel alive again. She didn't realize that fate had already begun to write the next chapter. A week passed. Emma went back to her routine. Long hours at the marketing firm, late nights with takeout and old movies. She barely remembered Daniel after a few days. But then one evening, her company held a small art exhibition to support local schools. Emma, who handled sponsorships, was assigned to coordinate with the lead artist who had donated his students' work. When she walked into the community center and saw Daniel setting up the art displays, her heart skipped. He looked up and smiled that same shy smile. "Hey, Emma, right?" Her stomach turned awkwardly. "Oh, hi. I didn't know you were the artist here," he chuckled. "Not really an artist anymore. My students are. I just help them see the beauty in things." There was something so genuine in his tone that it disarmed her. As the event began, she found herself watching him, how he knelt to adjust a child's drawing, how softly he spoke to his students, how his eyes brightened when parents praised their kids. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just good. That night when she was about to leave, a small girl ran up to Daniel, a bright-eyed child with a messy ponytail and paint on her fingers. She jumped into his arms and giggled. Daddy! Daddy, I finished my painting. Daniel hugged her tightly, his entire face lighting up. That's my little artist. Emma smiled unconsciously. The girl noticed her and waved shyly. Hi, are you Daddy's friend? Emma crouched down. I guess I am. You must be Lily. The little girl nodded proudly. Daddy tells stories about a nice lady who helped him once when he was sad. He says she's the reason he believes in happy endings. Daniel looked embarrassed. Lily! But Lily turned back to Emma and added with an innocent grin, You look just like the lady from Daddy's favorite story. For a moment, the world seemed to still. Emma's heart clenched at the sincerity in the child's eyes. She glanced at Daniel, who looked away, his face flushed. Something deep inside her softened, something she didn't know was still capable of feeling. Over the next few weeks, their paths kept crossing, sometimes through work projects, sometimes coincidentally at the local coffee shop, where Lily would draw in her sketchbook while Daniel graded papers. Emma started joining them, telling herself it was just friendly company. But the truth was, she found herself drawn to the peace she felt around them. Lily would chatter endlessly, and Daniel would listen with that patient warmth only a loving father could have. Emma began to see the beauty in his ordinary. He wasn't just an art teacher. He was a man who had survived heartbreak of his own. His wife had passed away when Lily was just a baby. He had raised her alone, painting at night to make extra money. The exhaustion in his eyes wasn't from failure, but from devotion. Emma felt ashamed for how quickly she had dismissed him before. She had been chasing sparkle, not realizing that real love often looked like steady hands and quiet strength. One afternoon, as they sat in the park watching Lily chase pigeons, Daniel said softly, You know, I almost didn't go to that blind date. I thought you'd think I was boring, but Lily told me, Maybe the lady will like your stories, Daddy. Emma smiled sadly. I'm sorry for how I acted that night. You deserved better. He shook his head. You were honest. I respect that. For a long moment, they sat in silence, listening to the laughter of children and the rustle of leaves. Something unspoken hung in the air. Fragile, but real. As weeks turned into months, the three of them became inseparable. Lily adored Emma, and Emma, to her surprise, found herself falling in love not just with Daniel, but with the warmth of their small, imperfect world. She'd come over after work, help Lily with her drawings, or join them for simple dinners of pasta and laughter. The apartment was small, the furniture worn, but the air was filled with a kind of peace she had never felt even in her luxury high-rise. One evening, while helping Lily with a school project, Emma noticed a sketch pinned on the wall, a drawing of a woman standing beside a man and a child, all holding hands under a painted rainbow. Lily, this is beautiful, she said softly. Who are they? The little girl grinned. That's me, Daddy and you. It's from Daddy's favorite story, the one where the lonely man meets the lady who makes him believe in love again. Emma's throat tightened. She turned to Daniel, who was standing in the doorway, watching quietly. His eyes were glistening. Lily thinks you're from my story, he said, his voice low. But maybe she's right. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. All the walls she'd built began to crumble. The fear, the pride, the belief that love had to be perfect to be real. She realized then that love wasn't about grand gestures or fancy dinners. It was about small, everyday moments, about someone who shows up even when life isn't easy. A year later, on a soft spring morning, Daniel stood at the front of a small community garden, nervously holding a single white rose. Emma walked down the narrow path lined with children's handmade paper flowers, Lily's idea. The little girl stood proudly between them, holding both their hands as Daniel whispered, You turned my favorite story into reality. Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid to believe in love. Not the kind that sparkles, but the kind that stays. They exchanged vows quietly, surrounded by friends, family, and the laughter of children. When Daniel kissed her, Lily squealed, Now our story really has a happy ending. The crowd laughed, and Emma looked down at her new stepdaughter, her heart full. She finally understood that sometimes what we think we don't want is exactly what we need most. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes softly, through a gentle man and his brave little girl who remind you that second chances aren't miracles. They're choices. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who still believes in love after heartbreak, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories that remind us of the beauty in simple kindness. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you give someone a second chance if life brought them back to you in an unexpected way?